First, I really would like to thank the European Parliament not only for hosting this event today, but being so proactive, helping us with promoting this idea. And I particularly like when the members of the European Parliament, like Mr. Buzek, like Mr. Marsares, are also talking about the money. Because if you, as you know, the European Parliament is one arm of the budgetary authority, so usually when the European Parliament talks about the money, something comes out of it. And I think that in this process, I think it would be very important for flexibility, which we have to demonstrate in how to use the money from the current programming period, but also in the talks which will start in earnest as of 2nd of May, where the European Commission is going to table new proposal for the next multi-annual financial perspective, meaning next 7 years budget. And I also would like to appreciate the fact that on both initiatives, the ideas we presented in the second half of the last year, be it the batteries or this platform for the coal region in transition, we had such a good progress. In the morning I had the chance to discuss here in the European Parliament what we have already accomplished in the European Alliance of Batteries and how important it is for the energy transition, for better accommodation of renewables in our systems, for promoting of a clean mobility. This afternoon, I think it's very symbolic. We are discussing, how to tackle this challenge, which is of course a challenge political, but for me, especially, it's a challenge which is social. Because I think we have to think first and foremost about these 185,000 people working in this business, and we have to offer them new vision, new perspective, new possibilities for the economic development. And therefore, I'm glad that around this idea, we managed to gather such a support in a relatively very short period of time, and we already started the very concrete work on ground in 3 pilot regions, in Silesia, in Western Macedonia, in the Slovak region of Trenčín. And I heard that over the last 2 days there was a lot of new ideas, new projects which were presented here and showcased, and I believe this would generate not only more work for DG Energy, which is represented here, but also for our colleagues from DG Regio, who would have to be more flexible in reprogramming the funds for our colleagues from DG Employment, because they would have to apply more flexibly their rules if it comes to retraining, reskilling, social assistance in these programs. And I would be able to name many more commissioners who somehow would be involved in work of this platform. And therefore, the most important contribution into the discussion which we would have within the Commission, but especially with the Parliament and the Commission, is a contribution from you, from the representatives of the regions. What do you think is the best way forward? What are the projects which you really need? Where you see the bottlenecks which are preventing you from the future development? What are the real reasons for the fact that the GDP is lower, that salary is not comparable to other regions, and how you also see the future development, because it must be supported on the ground and it must be the local input which should make this project successful. So I understand that this is the approach which is also attracting other regions into our discussions. I mean, we have strong interest coming from Brandenburg, from Saxony, for North Rhine-Westphalia in Germany, from Jubali in Romania, from Moravian Silesia in Czech Republic, from Castile, Leon, Aragon, and Asturias in Spain. So all these regions already contacted us and would like to cooperate with us even closer. And I think that they are supporting this process because they agree with these basic premises that what we are talking here is the just transition approach, where we want to make sure that no region, no community, no individual would be left behind and without any perspective, and that we just would adopt technocratic decisions without thinking about the people. And it's always, the scenario which is doomed to failure, because if you cannot bring the people with you, if they cannot support what you do, like what we are trying to accomplish in Europe in the form of the transformation of our energy systems, modernization of our economy, in this framework of this overall decarbonization, then of course we would face a lot of political obstacles and not enough support. So therefore our cooperation here, I think it's very important, because the European success in this global energy transition wouldn't depend only on the front runners, on those who are the most innovative, who are the best, but also on making this fundamental transition the inclusive one, where we really would work with all the regions who are facing this big challenge. We need to think about jobs, about upskilling, about new opportunities. We have to also identify what could be the new growth sectors in these regions, how we can combine our goals in climate change, energy transition and sustainability with the situation on the ground, how we can keep the youngsters in the regions. This was the message I was getting in Katowice, where we talked to the regional parliamentarians, and they said we want to make sure that people will have a future here in our region. They would not leave, they would not be afraid about respiratory diseases of the children, they would not be doubting that the investors would come and create more jobs in this region. And that's, I believe, our common task. When we launched the platform in Strasbourg last December, we wanted to make sure that we would design the platform which would help these regions to achieve concrete goals, because we wanted to give the representatives of the regions, the members of the European Parliament, very concrete and practical tool which would help this transition. And we've been working very closely with you, and we set up the teams of experts from across the Commission, and we started with these 3 pilot regions. I can tell you that we've been preparing for any of the missions, so the room was rather full, and there were people from the Joint Research Center preparing the economic feasibility studies, impact assessment, and also kind of forecast for the future development. We've been talking to DG Energy, DG Klima, DG Growth, DG Employment, and so on and so forth. The room was really full, and what we then presented in the region, this was the result of this collective brainstorming, where we wanted to present the ideas and get the feedback. As we did at our first visit in the regions, where the Commission teams meet with the regional authorities, with the managing authorities of the EU funds, because we need their support and their flexibility on the ground in the pilot region as well. Because usually what you hear from the ministers in all of your countries, they will tell you that all EU funds are already allocated, they are spending in a perfect manner, there is nothing left, nothing for reallocation. And here I think it's very important to have that very earnest political discussion at home, because we know that it's not true. Because our experience with absorbing the funds is such that usually you have some slippages, usually you do not spend it on time, and very often you are faced with a hectic spending at the end of the budget period. We want to prevent it. We are offering something which was unthinkable just 2 years ago: flexibility, readiness of the Commission, of the DG Regio, to work with you on reallocation, on reprioritization, on better use of money, on front-loading of some of the projects, that you do not have to wait until 2021 and use N+1, N+2 rule for funding some of the projects. You can do it now. If the project is good, if the region is supporting it, and if your government and the ministry is responsible for spending this money, would be supportive as well. And therefore I think this is one of the top priorities where we need to work together. We as a Commission will be very honest in telling what we believe is ready for reprogramming, how the spending rate is look like, and then of course we need your support to convince your government, your ministries responsible for the spending, that there should be more flexibility in how and when we spend the money. Because I believe that we have a lot of projects which have been presented to me at my missions, but I know also during these 2 days in Brussels, which could be quick win for everyone. So I would say, as Jerzy was highlighting, we have 41 core regions in 12 member states, 185,000 people working, in this sector, and therefore we need to show not only the social empathy, but also good ideas for the future. Some regions are interested in developing geothermal hydro energy in former coal mines. Others would like to invest the money in e-mobility, in digitalization, in building up of data centers parks. in building innovation parks on the side of the coal mines, as I have seen here in city Kane, which is a few kilometers from Brussels, or building the local energy communities. Or some are promoting, as Pavel just did in his presentation, to transform the former coal mining region in a tourist centers with a beautiful recultivated natures, lakes, and the place for recreation and the rest. So the opportunities are endless, and it depends on the input from the ground. Of course, what we would need here would be close cooperation with your national governments on these concrete projects, but also on something what Mr. Marcellesi was calling for, the vision. We are working now very hard with the European Parliament on the governance proposals, and we would like to kind of give a very important homework to the member states, because we would like to ask them, how you see your country from the energy and climate point of view, with a horizon of 2030, and with a long-term vision, it should be carbon neutral second half of this century. Prepare your national energy and climate plans. Tell us what are your views about energy mix, about the modernization of the sector, about the inclusion of all these people who are now having questions about the future of the region, and discuss it with your neighbors in the region, discuss it with the European Commission, so we would have these 27 or 28 compatible visions which would really promote Europe forward, and that would be, I think, the place for the long-term strategizing if it comes to the whole regions as well. Here I have several big numbers concerning the financing, and that we have more than 300 billion of euros allocated for the cohesion policy. And the number which I'm going to tell you is that according to our assessment, half of it is not spent. It's probably allocated, but it's not spent. So this is still, I would say, as I said, big financial reserve. I can imagine the complicated debates in the national government, but that's one of the very important sources which we, the Commission, are ready to explore, to discuss with you, and be ready to relocate, reprogram for the good programs. We have 44 billion euros, which is allocated for the smart specialization strategies, exactly for retraining, for reskilling, upskilling, for bringing, I would say, new expertise into the region. And of course, some of your regions are already benefiting from participating in Horizon 2020 programs, which is aimed for research and innovation, and where the breakthrough and disruptive technology could be supported even with a higher level of the risk investment. Then we have a European Social Fund. We have the Global Adjustment Fund, and we have other possibilities which would have been presented by the European Investment Bank, but I know that my colleague Vice President got flu, so he couldn't be here, but I know that they are very much supportive of this initiative, and we shouldn't forget that the European Investment Bank is actually the biggest public bank on this planet. So let's use them. Let's use them also for these programs, for these projects. Let's set up the investment platforms across our member states, which will help us to aggregate the projects for energy efficiency, for our regions in transition, and let's combine it with structural funds, with the risking financial instruments supported by the European Commission, and bring this additional financing into our countries. To conclude, I would like to say that, of course, we had busy autumn, we had busy, quite successful spring in not only in these two projects, but also in legislative agenda, which is very much in the hands of ENVI and ITRE committee if it comes to the energy union file. And I think that the Katowice would be the name of the city which we would repeat a lot this year. Because the autumn COP24 should meet in Katowice. And that would be, of course, not only the opportunity but also obligation of the EU to present where we stand as a leader in tackling the global change, how we want to approach it. But I think it would be also the opportunity to discuss, debate, what kind of concrete projects we already have put on the table, which will be coming from the discussions initiated by our platform. So I'm very much looking forward to our common work, to continue support, I hope, from the European Parliament for many great ideas coming from the region, and I can promise you that from the side of the Commission we show as big flexibility as possible so we can really use the European funds well and make this energy transition as inclusive as possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vice President.